A News 13 investigation exposes how wildlife officers killed black bears during a hailed undercover investigation.
Dozens of accused poachers are facing hundreds of charges, but now a local congressman is calling for a federal investigation into the officers' conduct.
News 13's investigative reporter Mike Mason brings us part 2 of a special report.
This operation was intended to save black bears, but reports show wildlife officers are the ones who killed at least half of them. Tonight we uncover new evidence one attorney says should lead to the automatic dismissal of these charges. North Carolina wildlife officer Chad Arnold is hired to protect animals like black bears, but News 13 has uncovered evidence showing he killed them instead. According to his reports, it was all part of a covert operation aimed at busting poachers. On October 27, 2011, Arnold reported killing a bear by himself on Walt Stansel's property in Georgia. Arnold notes how he walked half a mile into the woods with no other hunters anywhere around. Arnold reports shooting a bear, then calling Walt Stansel and his son Cale to come help him find it.
Followed the blood trail right across those logs, and the bear's laying here.
The report states the Stansels helped Arnold to load the bear onto their truck. They then drove it to Jerry Parker's house nearby. In Arnold's report, he notes how he skinned the bear and processed the meat at Parker's house in Georgia. The next day, Parker wasn't even home when Arnold loaded the meat into his own truck and drove back to North Carolina. The case file doesn't indicate Arnold told anyone what he was doing or where he was going. That's why Jerry Parker, along with Walt Stansel and his son Cale, were stunned to find out Arnold had charged them with a federal felony for transporting the bear across state lines.
I think it is very low-down trickery.
I've been doing this 38 years. I have never seen anything like this, ever.
Russell McLean is a lawyer representing some of the other accused poachers. He questions whether North Carolina wildlife officers even had the authority to make cases in Georgia. McLean filed this motion for discovery last September, compelling the government to provide documentation that Arnold and Webb were both authorized to conduct investigations across state lines.
Every time I've asked for it, they've told me they didn't have it. I even had one DA tell me they didn't have one.
News 13 managed to obtain cooperative agreements between the federal government and both state wildlife agencies. In 2006, Georgia signed an agreement with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, allowing Officer David Webb to work outside of the state. North Carolina's agreement was signed between the Commission's colonel and the U.S. Forest Service. But News 13 found North Carolina's agreement was signed and dated in February of 2012, 4 months after Officer Chad Arnold had already made his cases. That's when he drove bear meat across state lines, leading to federal charges being filed against Parker and the Stansels.
They don't have the agreement. He has no authority.
What would that do to the cases?
Well, it's up to the judge to make the decision. I believe the cases ought to be dismissed.
McLean also says officers blurred legal lines when they began killing bears themselves. After all, if these rogue hunters were so trigger-happy, the officers shouldn't have needed to kill any bears. North Carolina officials wouldn't discuss any of the case details, but Georgia wildlife officers say this kind of conduct is not unusual in a covert operation.
If a bear would have been present, the officer hadn't have taken it, how does that look? Well, do you want to, they could have said very easily, well, do you want to shoot the bear or not?
Our research found officials witnessed 7 black bears killed illegally. Out of those, Officer Chad Arnold killed 1 bear in Rabun Gap, Georgia, and a cub in Macon County, North Carolina. In Graham County, North Carolina, Georgia Officer David Webb killed 1 bear and fired 2 shots at another one. Webb claims he purposely missed, but Chad Crisp was there and says Webb's bullet struck the bear. In Webb's report, he writes, he then handed his pistol to Crisp so he could finish off the bear.
He had to shoot it to put it out of its misery. It was suffering.
Crisp was charged with illegally killing a bear out of season. He and other accused poachers now plan to make their case in federal court, hoping the judge will dismiss the charges and officers will realize they're not above the law.
They're crooks. They're criminals.
The operation was very successful.
Out of 7 bears killed illegally, wildlife officers shot 4 and killed 3.
When there were more animals taken by federal agents or federal and state agents than there were by the people that had been accused, that was troubling.
Congressman Mark Meadows has called for a federal investigation into the officers' conduct. While that seems encouraging, families feel it may be too little, too late.
It's taken a lot away from me and my husband, just the stress that they've caused him.
Because I refuse to give up.
You're going to keep pursuing this?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The Inspectors General of the Department of the Interior and Agriculture will soon determine if the officers' actions should be investigated further. Meanwhile, Officers Chad Arnold and David Webb both received the Officer of the Year award for their work during this operation. McLean is demanding the state attorney drop all cases that were made by Chad Arnold before the cooperative agreement was signed. The next federal court hearing is set to begin in Asheville on May 27th. We'll, of course, keep you updated.